All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to the Juju office hours. What this is open community hangout where we get a bunch of Juju charmers, core devs, and a bunch of people. We have a hangout. We kind of hang out and we talk about all the cool things and features that we're working on, charms that we're working on. We kind of want this to be if you want to catch up to see what's going on in the Juju community, you can just watch the show every other week, or you can come hang out, tell us something that you're working on. Mostly this is really the vibe we're trying to shoot for is you're going to the bar and you're talking about Juju. What cool things do you want to talk to your friends about without making you having to read release notes and all this boring kind of stuff? So today, let's introduce ourselves, everybody. Let's go left to right here. I'm George Castro. I'll be your host and MC for today. And first up, we got Charles Butler. Everyone just introduce yourself real quick and say what you work on real quick.
Hi, I'm Chuck Butler. I'm a Juju charmer, and I work on the container ecosystem.
Corey.
Yeah, I'm Corey Johnson. I'm a Juju charmer, and I work on the big data charms.
Marco.
Marco Ceppi. I'm also a Juju charmer, and I work on the developer experience concentration.
All right. Matt.
Yeah, my name is Matt Bruzek. I'm a Juju charmer. I'm working on the new workloads or container stories. Yep.
Awesome. Tim.
Hi, my name is Tim Penhay. I lead the Juju Onyx team as a Juju core dev.
Awesome. Great. Now, unfortunately for the rest of you guys, Marco's sick today. That means the rest of us have to make up for the normally verbose contributions he makes to this program. So, Thumper, you're a guy on the core dev team, and we don't get you guys often, so I'm going to abuse you as much as I can. And then we're going to get we'll talk about the new release, Juju Core 123.3. That's the latest stable release. And I want to talk about some of the things in
124.0?
Oh, I'm sorry. They haven't updated. Hold on. I haven't refreshed that. Okay. So let's talk about 124. And the release notes page is out of date. All right. So we found our first bug. Not even 10 minutes in. Okay. So let's talk about 124. We'll talk about all the stuff in development. And then each of the teams will have an update from Chuck on the container stuff, Corey, whatever you big data guys are working on, Marco, if you could just spend a minute or two talking about the benchmarking stuff, and Bruiser, actually you and Chuck could go together. Oh, and Jay Rent's here, another guy from the core team, but we'll start with you, Thumper, since it's probably late for you down there in New Zealand. So first of all, what's the Onyx team do, and then let's what you tell us on what you guys have been working on this cycle, and maybe what you're working on over the next 2-3 months. What exciting things can we get from you?
It's not really late. It's nice and early. It's 8 a.m. here.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, my geography is totally messed up then.
That's all right. I turned up for this meeting yesterday.
Oh.
My team's been focusing a lot on what has now been termed the Juju environment server or environment system. We originally called it the multi-environment state server, but the acronym was NACT at some stage. The idea here is that instead of bringing up a Juju environment and having to bootstrap and having HA nodes to manage your system and have it only look after one environment, we'll have it so you can now look after many environments. The intent here is that you can end up having there'll be someone that will be responsible for looking after the Juju system. They can make sure that the servers are running, add different users to it, and then people can then create their own environments. So instead of seeing the traditional thing when you bring up your Juju system and you'll have machine 0, when you get a new environment that's been created inside a Juju environment system, it'll be completely clear. There'll be no machines, no services, nothing. But it does mean you can then have multiple environments running inside the system, and different. At the moment, we don't have full role-based permissions yet. This is where we would like to get later, but at the moment we do have it so not everyone has access to every environment. Different users will have access to particular environments. So we've got a number of commands that have been added, a number of concepts have been restructuring commands. So there's going to be a Juju system command, as well as Juju environments. So a lot of work around that. This is hopefully going to be landing into master soon, and we're trying desperately to get it in the 125 release under a feature flag. It's been a massive restructuring internally. But yeah, it's been good. As far as future work goes, with the concept of having multiple environments inside state servers, there'll be times when you end up having more environments than you can manage, and we need to be able to load balance them between multiple systems. So the next piece of work, and this will be an extremely interesting piece, is being able to move a running environment from one Juju system to another.
So I have a question. I have questions about that, but before, let's just introduce James real quick. Hi, James, you want to introduce yourself real quick? We're just doing quick introductions and kind of a status report on what people are working on right now.
Yeah, how's it going, guys? I'm the cloud engineer for Dark Horse Comics, and we run a OpenStack cloud using Ubuntu's deployment software and provisioning software, including Juju and Maz, and the Ubuntu OpenStack installer.
Man, that is awesome. All right, we're just going to talk to you the rest of the time, if that's all right. So, oh man, I love Dark Horse Comics too. I have like all the old school Star Wars ones and stuff.
Hey, we love you guys too.
Oh, all right. So why don't we? Man, all right. This is great.
Don't let me interrupt. Just keep.
Oh no.
You guys are.
I no longer care about what my coworkers are talking about. So real quick, so can we ask you some questions? Do you mind if we ask you about like your setup and stuff? And
yeah, sure, that's fine.
Okay, so about how many nodes? I mean, if there's something you can't say, you could just leave it out. So you're using Juju and Maz together, so obviously on bare metal. And then you said OpenStack then?
Yeah, so previously we had deployed OpenStack just by hand rolling it with Juju, and in our moving forward, our current deployment that we're trying to move into production right now uses the OpenStack installer.
Okay. Right.
Basically, there's been a few concerns we've had to attend to as far as decoupling DHCP and DNS from the Maz server that have unfortunately really negatively impacted our progress we were making using all the technologies. And so, I mean, I wasn't really, I wasn't joining to come hang out for like a troubleshooting session, but I was hoping maybe someone might be able to shed some light on, I mean, more than just filing a bug report and going through the standard process of like troubleshooting. What avenues do I have to be able to, like, I guess perform? Never mind.
I mean, yeah. So I just so I can understand the problem. Basically, kind of Maz is designed to be like a all-in-one. Here's your DHCP, here's your DNS, and then we set everything up for you. And I'm assuming you have your own existing DHCP server and DNS. And that's where you're seeing some conflict. You want the ability for Maz to be able to consume your existing infrastructure instead of providing its own.
Totally, and it does that very well up to a certain point. But up to the point where I try to deploy containers, charms on containers, and basically the containers aren't able to get resolution via IP address or via hostname. Even though they're all bare metal machines and virtual machines deployed with Juju and Maz seem to take to the decoupled DHCP and DNS really well, but container-based services, there's something going on. I can't really introspect any further, and basically I just filed a bug with you guys. But
okay, if you have that bug number handy that you can pass to us, either in IRC or on the chat, we can definitely. And Bruiser or somebody, can you guys see if Andres is around on IRC? Maybe we can have him hop on and talk to him. Someone find him while we continue.
James, what I was hearing, you were talking about.
Actually, George Chuck might have some answers for him right away here.
Excellent.
Some of what you were talking about, you're looking for incoming network connectivity to these containers, or is it also failing on outbound network connectivity? The way that Juju works today, when you deploy a Lexi container to a host, It sets up host-based networking, so it can communicate with other services that are containerized on that host, but cross-container communication requires an SDN layer in our current model. There is work incoming from one of the other Juju core teams to land networking support, so Juju provides this natively. That's been in dev, I think, for about 2 months now, so we should start to see some of those crumbs landing in one of the next betas.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's really great. So, I mean, yeah, I'm not doing local LXC deployments, so I'm deploying LXC containers to machines that are provisioned through my MAS server.
So you're saying Juju deploy TAC to like LXC:5 to deploy to a LXC container on machine number 5, right?
Exactly, exactly.
That is the exact same situation when you deploy into the cloud as it is when you deploy on your laptop. The LXC networking sets up a, I believe it's 10.0.10.3 network address, and it just assumes that it's host only. This is something that we've known about for a little while that fixes are incoming for.
Oh, gotcha. So it seems when I have DHCP and DNS running local on my MAS server that this problem ceases to exist.
Right. So when Maz owns the networking, it's able to create the proper bridging for that to happen. So a container addressability is currently supported at 123 of Juju for AWS environments, and Maz only if Maz has the DNS and DHCP layers enabled for it, though.
Gotcha.
So that's probably why you're seeing that issue, where if you were to use it without the DNS and DHCP for Maz, you'll need to have some additional way to some SDN on top of that that allows you to layer those on there. We could definitely work something out to figure out if there's a way with Juju where we can enable Juju to do that still addressability for containers without having Maz and DHCP enabled. But I think that'd be a little more investigatory task than what we have for this hangout. But we'd be happy to follow up with you and see if we can figure out what's going on. Maybe start a thread on the mailing list and loop in some of the core engineers working on addressability in containers.
Yeah, that'd be really great. Actually, Chuck, since you have a pretty good answer to this, can you grab his bug, summarize what you just said, and then maybe kick off the conversation on the Juju mailing list?
You bet.
And then we can get the core guys involved. Make sure that this bug gets triaged right after this call. Maybe linking them up to all the other container networking issues.
I've triaged it already.
Oh, good. See, we didn't even have to bother our MAS guy. It's like awesome. Okay, next problem. What else do you got?
I mean, that's basically it. I've had to basically demo a bunch of different OpenStack provisioning solutions for Dark Horse, and I really like using the open source technology above a lot of the other things, and I think Dark Horse does too. I mean, basically, we're just little things like this really stop us up much further than just like the bug that it is may seem to be small in significance, but to us now, basically I have to redesign our whole OpenStack deployment around not using any container-based services. So,
Right.
I mean, if you can see my workflow going in spurts, it's like hurry up and wait. I'll make a lot of progress and then I'll hit something, well, not similar to this, but another little bug here or there, and those usually get resolved pretty quickly and pragmatically, which I really have to commend you guys on.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, your whole team just works so well, and yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to really complain about anything. You guys are just great, but things like this just kill the workflow.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm really glad you showed up because sometimes we have no idea who's listening or who's even out there, and usually just hey, I use this stuff. Here's the one bug I have is enough to get the. I mean, that's basically all I have to say to get the core team to prioritize a bug. So we definitely do that in this case. So how long have you guys been using Juju? And Marco had some interesting comments on the sidebar. What versions are you guys on? Do you usually track? Are you on Trusty? Do you track the latest stable release or?
Yeah, we try to keep it LTS around here. Except for in our dev lab and our test lab where we'll run. We have MAS 1.8 stood up right now, and
Nice.
I mean I've definitely been testing the develop branches and trying to see what breaks and what works with things we're currently using and things that are upcoming. So Yeah, 1.8 is really sexy too. I've been checking it out all morning.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean that's really about it. I just wish this current bug wasn't what it is, because I mean it's either going to entail our company ordering more nodes that.
No, we'll make sure that doesn't happen. Because I mean, losing the ability to use containers. I mean, containers are so great. When you can't use them, it really kind of punches you in the stomach, right? Like.
Totally. So in production, we should have 6 compute nodes. We have a Ceph storage cluster that consists of 3 monitors and 3 OSD servers, on which we run 8 1 terabyte SSDs each.
Okay.
So our storage cluster isn't that large, but we have about 5 more NUCs that support a few other OpenStack services like Cinder, Ceph RadOS Gateway. I think we're running RabbitMQ on a NUC, and the rest, I think about 8 more services get containerized. So for us to ditch the whole container thing right now, moving forward would mean we need to find another way, basically, to house 8 services that's not container based, and that yeah, it's just posing an issue right now.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm really glad you brought this to our attention, because this is how we kind of hope to drive feature and bug fixes into the project itself. Out of curiosity, how much of your infrastructure is running on OpenStack? Do you have like your old setup? Like, how long have you guys been running OpenStack and whatnot?
So we've been running since Grizzly. So we have a Grizzly stack currently standing in production. It's super scary, to tell you the truth. And so moving forward, we're trying to consolidate a lot of our services into our upcoming Kilo stack, which has came a long way, and it's basically ready for production right now, minus a few little bugs that I'm having to thin out, like this one that I'm on right now. But we should have about 20 nodes starting out in our new production cluster. And if we have to ditch the containers, that should be about 26. Given that, there's a whole, cluster of different services that we're looking at either renewing subscriptions for or re-implementing the infrastructure for that have the possibility to run on OpenStack as well. And so some of these services require a minimum of 10 servers, 10 physical servers to set them up, and they all have to run Windows and la-ti-da-ti-da. So one of the big things I'm looking at moving forward is provisioning a bunch of our Windows-based services on our OpenStack cloud. It's sad but true. So yeah, moving forward, it's going to be a lot bigger than it currently is, and it's going to consume a lot more infrastructure than it currently does. So being able to run the 6 or so services on containers that we currently are is a big deal. But yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Are you planning on orchestrating those Windows services with Juju as well? Just pointing out the cross-platformy nature of that.
I actually hadn't gotten that far, and prior to the other day, I'd never provisioned a Windows machine on OpenStack, and so I honestly haven't gotten that far, nor do I want to. But yeah, I'll be looking into it when the time comes. I'm just trying to get our basic production ready stack standing as things are. Yeah. Are many people running Juju and Maz using decoupled DNS and DHCP?
I think Marco could provide. I do know that
I would be able to tell you. I know people doing both coupled and decoupled. Maz really likes to own the whole stack when possible, but I do know of a couple of enterprise customers that are doing it decoupled, but I'm not sure of much of their infrastructure past that they're doing it that way.
Right. Because I think there's a good range of our customers that kind of set aside an entire this is going to be the OpenStack lab, and then or the OpenStack deployment, and they kind of set it up separately from their existing infrastructure. But there's also a wide range of people that do need to set it up, but might not even control their DHCP or DNS, right? That might be another division or another section of the IT department, and they might not be allowed to run their own DNS and DHCP. And I know that we have people doing that as well. So I'm wondering if this is more of a problem with the OpenStack install.
No, I think Tim mentioned the sidebar that it should work with DNS and DHCP off from a Juju perspective. So this may be something that is just a bug in a corner case that wasn't quite addressed or maybe wasn't fully vetted out for the release. So we know the bug, will escalate the bug for sure, get some other eyes on it, see if we can figure out where it's happening, and hopefully get a 1.24.1 release with it in there.
Yeah, that'd be great. What version are you guys on? Are you guys on of Juju?
Yeah, we're on 1.2.4. Or, excuse me, 1.24.
Oh, okay, so revving up to a point release won't be... That's great. Sometimes it's like, yeah, we're on 1.18, and you're just like, oh, man.
Yeah.
So you guys seem to track the stable releases quite aggressively then, huh?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm all about keeping things stable and up to date, but at the same time, not stepping any production services into devel realm at all.
Right. Fresh, but not too fresh.
Exactly. We've got a really good test lab here that I basically run deploys on everything in the test lab before we'd even think about moving it into staging and even further into production.
So can you talk a little bit then about how you use Juju to kind of make that easier for you as far as moving a service from like testing to production?
Yeah.
Or are you only using it to deploy OpenStack?
Yeah. Here at Dark Horse, we're currently only using Juju to deploy OpenStack.
Mm-hmm.
We basically use Puppet as a black box configuration utility for all of our other services that are not OpenStack. So anything else we use in-house, we set up a class in Puppet, and those things get deployed and configured via Puppet.
Okay. Cool.
That being said, I think Puppet has a lot of use when integrated with Juju as well.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Have you looked at that? Because we haven't really. We're always kind of on the lookout for like a perfect example of someone who's taken their existing Puppet knowledge, not thrown it away, right, but leveraging Juju to kind of get what they need without throwing away large, 5 years worth of their expertise on that service, So.
Totally, yeah. I would say definitely interfaces, network interfaces is one huge place where Puppet can swoop in, and I mean even more so than having a commissioning script or something running as a late command. We could just make a Puppet class that says all storage servers need E3 configured via DHCP, and we don't have to worry about managing anything other than just making sure that Puppet class is applied to that box or whatever.
Cool.
And that's really a huge thing for us when deploying with Juju, especially when deploying OpenStack, is that a lot of the services need to talk on multiple different networks or use multiple different network interfaces. And I mean, I feel like the charms inherently kind of push for this, and the charms almost beg to use more than one network. And I feel like Juju really constrains the use the networking to a flat networking scenario, so to speak, because you have to really go outside of the environment to configure any of the OpenStack services to have more than one network, if you so intend, right? And so that's been a big holdup for us as well, just trying to plan our networking and really reaching the limit of what Juju can take us to. And then, for me, it's been all about implementing what the other side of that solution will be, where Juju kind of drops off and we need to pull in some kind of other configuration utility. So yeah, I would say that's one big disconnect that I notice in between like service orchestration and intended service orchestration. is that we may intend to use many more networks, but because of Juju's inherent restrictions, it seems that we too are then restricted as well.
Okay.
That being said, there's a lot of ways to work around that outside of Juju, but it would be nice moving forward to see some kind of push made for networking in the whole Juju environment.
Well, I know that in 124 we just added experimental support for modeling how storage is provided. I imagine the core, and maybe Thumper or Tim could speak to this better, but I imagine in the near future we'll also be looking to see how we can model other physical constraints in the environment, things like networking and other such things that people like you are experiencing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely on the cards, and there's been specs. I believe there's work has actually started on modeling complete networks inside Juju. It's the concept that they've started calling spaces. So it's going to be network spaces, and you're able to define effectively network topology, and then request that particular services be placed on particular networks, and Juju will do the right thing.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know we were going to do networking. I just don't know exactly where it is on the roadmap.
I didn't want to say anything without. I mean, it could have been.
I feel like we should have invited Alexis to this meeting. I'll definitely get her here the next one.
Help rein us back in, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely, especially with a lot of the work that the OpenStack charmers have been doing, that's been kind of one of the things is storage and networking, and having Juju model that would simplify the charms and then also making operators' lives a little easier in that you know your topology, you know where your resources are, and then having Juju just map those to the surfaces you wish them to be on.
Right.
Totally. Yeah, that seems like the solution for sure. And it also seems to be like maybe what some of the other. It seems very similar to the model of mapping and modeling networks that the other OpenStack orchestration tools are using as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does anyone here have any experience using or provisioning OpenStack with any other methods, orchestration methods?
I've used DevStack. I don't think that really counts, but
Yeah, I know our OpenStack charmers are actually not here right now. You guys keep talking. I'm going to see if I can snag one of them to answer your questions.
Well, oh no, we can ask like Ryan and them maybe still around.
Yeah. Keep talking. I'll find them.
Okay, well just keep talking. I've seen a couple other solutions being used, but I've mostly only used Autopilot, the OpenStack installer, and then just the charms just straight up for different permutations. One thing that might be interesting for you is, I'm sure to keep sliding things, is we recently charmed Rally. So if you're looking to kind of express some stress against your OpenStack deployments for some benchmarking stuff, we have that that's available now. It's in the charm store under a personal namespace. We're looking to polish it up, add more scenarios, and make that available to the OpenStack people who are using OpenStack and charms.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw that the Rally charm existed. I haven't deployed it yet, but that's definitely going to be a huge aid to us because we do a lot of stress and bench testing over here.
Sweet. As the person who's haphazardly leading this foray into Rally, if you have any scenarios you're interested in seeing modeled in that charm, let me know. I kind of just did whatever we had.
Just tell us what you want benchmarked, and we'll do that for you. Is what?
Yeah, basically, real-world users far and
Better
from
heed
what
your
my
benchmark
ideal
goal.
life is. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ryan's joined us here. Ryan, hey, I just went and grabbed you in IRC. If you could just introduce yourself to everyone real quick.
Hi, I don't even know what meeting I'm in, but hi, I'm Ryan Beisner. Yeah, so I work on the Ubuntu OpenStack engineering team, doing primarily testing and test writing, test automation, CI type stuff, and so it's office hours. Cool. I've not joined this yet. Hello, everybody.
So James here is deploying your stuff, Ryan, at Dark Horse Comics on OpenStack.
Bravo. Cool.
We were talking. He's got a bug that we need to fix in Juju, which won't be a problem. And then we are kind of discussing a little bit on what the future holds as far as Juju networking goes. So as far as using multiple NICs and networks with the OpenStack charms. And then what were you just talking about where I had to go get you? What was your question?
I don't know. OpenStack install other OpenStack orchestration methods.
For deploying the stack itself?
Yeah, that was the
no,
question.
My question was if anyone here had deployed or provisioned OpenStack with any other methods for orchestration.
So many moons ago, I've done it manually, right? And so that's painful. If you've tried that, it's not advisable. But anyway, actually, it is advisable. It really is the best way to understand how all of the services fit together to have to go do it manually. There is a
Hey, guy in the back.
That's our IT manager, Gary. He's just
that's the guy that installed it manually, right?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So as far as I have observed, there's no better way, cleaner way, and I'm certainly biased, than to use Maz and Juju to deploy the thing. And it's not really all about deployment with Juju and the Juju story. It's also about caring for that deployment longer term, being able to upgrade from Icehouse to Juno and from Juno to Kilo and from Kilo to Liberty. You can manage those OpenStack upgrades via the intelligence of the charms themselves and not have to. Who's rocking?
Sorry, that was me. That's a text.
George, come on, man. I'm kidding with you. Anyway, so yeah, the process is in Juju is not necessarily just about deploying and standing the thing up. It's also for caring about it for the longer term. And then we also have the landscape autopilot, which takes that a step further and orchestrates management of security patches and packages and things outside of the charm. And so those are also options available.
Totally. Thanks for that.
So autopilot, OpenStack installer. The autopilot incorporates the OpenStack installer the way I understand it. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, totally. So I've been using the OpenStack installer here at Dark Horse, and that it probably will be our means of provisioning OpenStack moving forward. But what I in particularly am interested in is that you guys know what else is out there also. So that, I feel like the developers are kind of barred off from knowing what other products exist in the same realm, right?
Right. So let me just put it this way, like without naming names, all of the other deployment tools that I've seen for bringing OpenStack online are much more focused on the near term than the long term, if that makes sense, right? So how quickly or how easily or how unattended can I stand this thing up? Most of them focus on. What most of them don't focus on is truly modeling those services and being able to to scale horizontally or scale vertically with these things, and then also to look at that deployment 2 years down the line. What are you going to do if you deployed it with a pile of Puppet scripts, right?
Yeah.
And so
well, I think
a lot.
When you compare I've seen a lot of other OpenStack installation methods, and I think the thing that makes it unique to what Juju's doing is it's not an OpenStack installer. It just happens to be an orchestration tool that models the deployment and management of OpenStack over time really well. But most of the other ones are just for OpenStack, which has its advantages and has its disadvantages. I mean, the advantages is it's a domain-specific solution, but at the same time, it can be very short-sighted in decisions it makes where it's just OpenStack related, whereas Juju takes into account the entire service stack and how you would model that on top of that. So the fact that it attacks it in a modeling language makes it more unique, but I've definitely seen a plethora of OpenStack installers. I was at ODS just a couple weeks ago, and there's a ton of vendors that are all doing OpenStack installation, but I think what sets Juju apart, what makes it more of a robust contender, is it's taking into consideration the different permutations that you may have. It's not just the reference architecture for OpenStack. It's OpenStack, we just have the services encapsulated. You can make the permutations and the mutations of the stack however you'd like.
Totally, I see that. Well put.
Yeah.
Very well put.
I'd also like to add that we have a bunch of people who aren't here that are more experts in other methods than we are. So like we have guys who know fuel backwards and forwards and whatnot.
Right.
They're just not here today, right? In case anybody out there think that we have absolutely no idea what we're doing. So.
Awesome. Yeah, so I actually had a little light bulb while we've been sitting here, and that is a kind of like a non-garden path light bulb. I feel like every move that we make that's, well, not garden path, we get stopped at, basically. And so kind of a running inside joke around here is that, like, oh, you're heading off the garden path again, right? And it's like, well, you know, most everything we do is going to be off the garden path, and that's somewhere where I feel that possibly, I mean, God, development efforts could just benefit not even corner cases, but just other use cases infinitely. So, I mean, basically, let's say, for example, what's happening right now with the issue with, like, DNS and DHCP. Like, MAS would consider, per the MAS documentation, we might consider the use of third-party or external DHCP and DNS a supported use case of MAS, but it's broken when in some cases, like the current one, when used in conjunction with other services. So I guess I wouldn't call it a corner case, but I would just call it another use case, right? And full coverage support is what I'm getting at here between the different Ubuntu services, between Juju, between MAS, and let's say between the OpenStack installer. If MAS supports something, the next should, and the next should. I guess that's just the problem of development, right? Everything has to be on track with everything, and the next thing, and the next thing. But yeah.
So with regard to MAS, there certainly are configuration options to be able to utilize DNS outside of MAS's purview. I've not personally used them. I know that there's a whole CI structure and that's tested somewhere. But you know, I think the affinity for MAS is that it would like to manage that for you. It makes it easier for reverse DNS and all these other things to just work. But I think you're right. I think there are some things that each environment will have that's unique, centralized DNS and such. But also, I think that you can also customize MAS and still let MAS do the DHCP and DNS for those nodes that it manages by network isolation, and still gain resolution of your existing DNS by modifying the templates and the things like that are in the bind configuration directories under etc MAS, whatever it is. So basically what happens then is the MAS services reparse those etc configuration directives back into its automatically generated bind conf, for example, or whatever the file is. So you can still do a lot of customization. Some of that may not be obviously documented, but if you look in the etc MAS directory, you'll kind of see a structure of templates that then kind of get collectively added back into the running configuration.
Totally.
So you can achieve a lot of that now. Some of it's represented in the GUI and some of it's not.
Totally, yeah. I'm pretty familiar with modifying the precedes. So on that note, another use case that's, I don't really feel a corner use case, but just another use case that we're hitting that doesn't seem to be very supported is deploying OpenStack at having multiple storage backends or multiple different OpenStack deployments, and being able to have a persistent storage backend, right? So let's say I have a Ceph cluster, and I want to use it as a backend for Cinder. I want to use it as a backend for Glance, and I deploy those other OpenStack services. If deployed with Juju, it seems that it's very difficult for me to leave my storage infrastructure in place because it's not part of the current environment that I'm deploying, right? And so for me to deploy on others, to leave my storage intact and just redeploy OpenStack, that just doesn't seem like it should be a corner case to me either.
So is your storage cluster deployed with Juju or outside of Juju?
I mean, currently my whole Kilo stack is down due to this current issue, but we've been deploying Ceph with Juju. So our Ceph cluster, when deployed in production with our Kilo stack, will be done with Juju. That being said, it makes it very difficult for us to do another OpenStack deployment and use that same storage cluster.
Yes, I see now. So yes.
That's a tricky one, isn't it?
But I really don't feel it should be a corner case either. I feel the charms treat it as a corner case, or as maybe a case that doesn't even exist, because they're just expecting OpenStack to be deployed as like one thing, and that's it in your Juju environment. There's your OpenStack. Well, what about federated architectures, or like all of the other use cases that aren't just the OpenStack in a box use case, right?
So there's certainly some federation development activities happening with regard to OpenStack, and with our charms. You've got Keystone Federation, that's a thing now with Kilo, and that'll be represented, I think, going forward in the charms. The Ceph thing's interesting. I suppose a person could manage a Ceph cluster in a Juju environment of its own, and there would be some manual configurations, though. Tim pointed out an interesting thing that's kind of a thing for us, is this cross-environment relation deal, which I don't know the roadmap for that, but I think that it's at least in the thought process or in the design process, maybe even already in some sort of code somewhere. But the idea being you're looking to have multiple clouds pointed at a common service, right, such as a storage backend. That could be represented by any number of needs in the Juju ecosystem, but that's a pretty good use case of that, I would say.
And just to clarify, this is you just stand up, the whole OpenStack stack, and then you want to stand up a separate OpenStack stack in a separate Juju environment, but use the existing Ceph cluster you have in the other environment, correct?
So I guess that too. I mean, my use case more or less would stem from being able to spin up multiple OpenStacks using one centralized Ceph backend. So it needed to be a Nova 1 pool, a Nova 2 pool, Nova 3 pool, and each of my different OpenStacks would use their respective pools in the Ceph cluster, therefore eliminating the need for multiple Ceph clusters. That being said, having multiple Ceph clusters and being able to interchange different OpenStack services resting on those clusters would be cool too.
Yeah, the use case I brought up is a little more challenging, but I think we may be able to. I'm still not quite grasping, but if I think I understand it correctly, we may be able to help you resolve this where you don't have to spin up separate clusters. I'll follow up with you later. I have to think a little more about that to make sure I wrap my head around the problem before I start just throwing out solutions. But
yeah, no worries.
There may be a potential that Juju could help you with that problem, but I'm not entirely sure I quite grasp the problem just yet. And if it doesn't, like you said, it's not. I mean, if it's a case that you're encountering, it's not a corner case. It's an actual use case, and we should find ways to either support it in future releases of Juju or something we can do to Charms to make that a better path forward.
Totally. That being said, like, we want to use our Ceph storage for many other things than OpenStack, right? And so we want to be able to deploy Ceph either with Juju or without, and then deploy OpenStack on top of it separately, completely separate, and not destroying any of the data that currently exists on the Ceph cluster, right?
Totally.
I mean, that's the main use case right there.
Sure.
Others that surround that.
What you could potentially do is deploy Ceph as its own environment, and then I've helped a lot of people recently in training vendors on how to tap into Cinder and other stuff. The OpenStack Charmers have done a great job of making it really easy to plug in external storage structures into OpenStack. So you could create a very simple charm that basically is a subordinate service that lives on top of Cinder, and it just supplies configuration options for where the Ceph is. So it would have configuration options for the host, the port, the whatever else is username, password, path, or blocks to use, and then that could feed it to the cinder.conf as if it was attached to Ceph. But it actually would just be a virtually mapping to that, so that when you destroy it, you're not destroying your entire Ceph cluster, and you can maintain Ceph separately, have its own upgrade cycle, have its own backup routines and such in separate environments.
Whoa, that's awesome. Is that currently a capability?
Well, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong.
So there's a Cinder Ceph charm, but it's not specifically for what you've described, although the name might infer that.
But it could be.
But it could be extended, perhaps, and it's already used in such a way, basically, to allow. Let me just see what the README says, because I think we're talking about allow multiple Ceph storage clusters to be associated with a single. It's just the opposite of what you're talking about. It's like I want multiple Ceph clusters to be addressable by a single Cinder deployment. Right. So invert that and.
Well, that too. I mean, that'd be really cool.
There you go. There's that too. So my guess is that work would be done in that charm. That's a subordinate, I believe, when it's used. It's not required in the deployment. It may not be part of the OpenStack installer. I'm not sure if it's in there or not. But it's a charm that we definitely exercise in our testing, and it's actively validated and developed and kept up to date with Kilo and Liberty, all of the future things.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I closely follow all of the work you guys do on the charm, so I'm pretty up to date with any changes that have been made recently, or all of the charms as well.
Cool. Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to post. I'll just paste a link right here to the development version of that charm. The caveat here is don't use that in production. We're likely to break it at least once this cycle before we release it. But there's a corresponding version in the charm store, for sure. But so if we have if we look at how that charm works, this could be an example of perhaps how to also turn that on its head and do what you want to do with that same charm as an optional configuration. It's at least an idea that we could take to some of our development conversations.
Totally. Is there a release schedule for the next charms, or are those just released as they approach a certain stability level? Or?
So we align with distro on that. The Ubuntu release cadence is every 6 months. You've got 15.10 that will be coming out in October, which will be the Wily Werewolf. We also have an interim release cycle that is halfway through that, so roughly every 3 months you'll see the OpenStack charms go from development to a released status. The next one will be sometime in July, generally toward the late part of the month. I would say, give or take the third week of July, so 1507, 1510. Then we'll be looking at 1601 January, and then 1604 April, and so on.
Totally. I think I may have misspoke. What schedule may there be for the charms to move from the next branch to the trunk branch?
That's what I'm talking about. So every 3 months we push those next charms over to the trunk, which within a few days of that end up in the charm store.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah, I've just noticed a lot of networking details that seem to now be implemented or close to implemented in the next charm.
It's been a busy year, and it's been already a busy cycle.
Yeah.
The reason that we moved to a tighter cadence to release more frequently was to hopefully help people address feature starvation. There's so much going on in the development of these charms. After 6 months, people would have the tendency to want to use the development version because there was a feature that they wanted, and naturally we don't want that to happen in production environments because it could break, right? It's not fully vetted and released. And so doubling that cycle is aimed at helping address that so that you get those features more quickly, and the delta is also smaller for everybody in the release process.
Totally awesome. Thanks.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. Any other questions before we go? We should definitely review the release notes real quick before we break. We try to have these office hours about every 3 weeks or so, James. So hopefully we'll have, by the time we convene next, fix that container bug for you. In fact, that's what I'm going to go chase down with one of the core guys right after this.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I've been stressing over it.
Oh man, dude, you never suffer alone. I mean, you can at least yell at me on the phone or something if you want to, if you want to do that. Okay, so with that, we'll definitely following up. I'll follow up on that bug. Those of you that are listening who are not familiar with Dark Horse Comics, this is my favorite one here, Tales of the Jedi. Also, Boba Fett, Deathlies, and Treachery. And I noticed you guys publish a whole line of Witcher comics, which I just spent way too much money ordering. So when I was clicking, was I going through your OpenStack there when I was buying stuff?
No. Yeah, actually, you were.
Sweet.
That was awesome. Okay, I just want to make sure I did that. That's really great. Okay, let's move on to the release notes for Juju 124. Marco, you want to take the lead on this since you seem to be a fan?
I'm a huge fan of this release.
Yeah.
Some good stuff.
Yeah.
I think the coolest thing that was added was a vSphere VMware provider. Well, that's one of the coolest things, actually. That's the coolest news provider that they added. I know a lot of people are using VMware hardware or vSphere themselves to manage clusters, so instead of having to wrestle with vSphere and MAS, just use vSphere. Juju supports it 124. Another really cool that I spent a few minutes on is service status. I know we talked about it a little bit last time, but service status is like the way to compel to users exactly what's going on in a workload. It's super awesome. I don't even have a demo. I failed with this one. But it allows you to set the status of the workload. So in 124 and above, there are some new fields that were introduced. Again, the YAML output will maintain backwards compatibility for quite some time. So you always have the agent state. But agent state started doesn't really tell you anything. In 124 and beyond, you now get an agent status and a workload status. So the agent status will tell you if the unit that it's on is idle or if it's executing. And then it'll tell you what it's executing this hook, executing that hook. And then the workload status is something that the charmer can set. You can use status minus set. And you can say if you're block, if you're in maintenance, if you're working, if you're active. So you can convey a state to the user and also supply a message along with that. So something like you deploy Keystone, it'll say, I'm blocked, I need to be added. I need MySQL added in order to work properly. So that ability to kind of feedback onto the user is much better. So that's service status. I recommend everyone check it out.
And you guys are already adding that to the OpenStack charms, if I'm right, Ryan. So it just doesn't say running, right? You're muted.
Now I'm not muted. It is. It's well underway. That's something that we're trying to crank out as quickly as we can to get that feedback. It really is a cool feature. As you're deploying services or interacting with deployed services, you can get more than deployed or active or ready state. It's pretty neat.
And it's in Python charm helpers already. And it actually, if you're using Python to write charms, using charm helpers, status set will degrade properly. Though this is a 124 only feature, so if you do status set on 123 or below, it'll fail. If you're using the Python charm helpers, it'll do status set for 124 and beyond, or it'll fall back to use Juju log for the Juju versions that don't have it. So if you're looking for a good way to incorporate this and you're using Python, you should definitely use the Python charm helpers for that. Blowing on forward, a couple other things that were added. Resource tagging in EC2 and OpenStack will actually set provider tags. So if you deploy a workload on Amazon or onto OpenStack, we will tag the service with the units that are running on it. So you'll now know exactly what's on these machines looking at those dashboards. It's super helpful for admins who don't want to always jump to the Juju status to see a quick snapshot of if they kill a server, what are they actually killing behind the scenes. CentOS 7 preview. So if you want to deploy workloads on CentOS, you can now do so with Juju 124. It's a preview release. There are still some bugs and known issues. The release notes go over those known issues. But as long as you have a CentOS 7 image with Cloud Init enabled, and the cloud-based guys have been working on that integration, they have a whole wiki on how to do that. You can start deploying Linux workloads, not just on Ubuntu, but also CentOS, in addition to the already supported Windows workloads. Juju's just growing its support for other operating systems. Finally, we have a storage support in Juju. It's experimental. The release notes go on about how you can define specific storage, things if you want to use EBS or SSD block, back EBS, or other volumes of storage that are supplied in OpenStack, Azure, Joint, Amazon, Even MAS 1.8 and forward, MAS also has the ability to map disks. You can do so as well using the storage provider. All that stuff is really cool, plus a slew of bug fixes. Unfortunately, not including the one that was just reported by James, but hopefully in the next release of Juju we'll see that fixed. That's the big meaty stuff from the 1.24.0 release.
Okay. Awesome. And with that, we're close to the top of the hour, so everyone's got to go on and get to work. James, thank you very much for joining us. You're always welcome to join these as well. Definitely be the loud squeaky wheel, because we love to fix people's problems that are actually having real problems. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll definitely follow up with you on that. Are you on IRC? How do we get your email address and stuff?
Yeah, I'm on IRC, and I'm should be registered with OpenID Launchpad, and I think I'm even registered as a contributor with Ubuntu.
Oh, okay, excellent. All right, so we'll definitely follow up with you then on this container bug, and thank you for using Juju and Ubuntu. That's pretty awesome.
Hey, thank you guys for all your time. I really appreciate it, and you guys produce great software, and I want to thank you for that as well.
Awesome, thank you very much. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. The next meeting will be, hold on, I don't want to let go without telling you guys when. I believe it's I just want to confirm here. It is going to be July 9th, same time. And actually, we're going to be joined by some guys in New York who want a charm school, so we'll probably take some time there to go over how to write a charm and answer a lot of questions conversely, and then depending on who shows up, what we're releasing, we'll just let that discussion drive itself. So with that, thanks everybody, and JujuCharms.com. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.